So in today's video, we're going to talk about 3 books that I read in November, 1 hit, 1 miss, and 1 beast. Then we're going to talk about what's lined up for December, along with some videos that are going to be happening here on the channel. It's exciting times here at BellTube World Headquarters. All right, no intro today because I am on a tight time crunch, and I'm going to try to do this edit-free, and I'm going to try to do it in one take. We'll see how that goes. Let's talk about the hit. Let's start off on the good news right away. So I finished off October with the massive beast that is Toll the Hounds, Book 8, the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And you'll have to go back and watch some of the older videos to find out what I thought of that book. But needless to say, it was heavy both in the literal sense, because it's a huge book, and it is quite heavy in the emotional sense that I was not really geared up for at the time. So when I started November, I knew I had to go to something that had a chance of being a little bit of a quicker read, a little bit of a more page-turning type of an experience, and boy, did I find it. Yes, the Quilluminati are getting together in December right here on BellTube. We'll talk more about that later, but the book that I selected for my particular pick this time around is Michael Connelly's The Last Cowboy. I am completely new to this author. I am obviously very blind to the character of Harry Bosch, who's our main, detective here in this crime fiction story, because I've never seen the TV show. Now, I'm not going to get into the deep themes of this book. I'm not going to get into all of my giant thoughts because I'm saving those for our Quilluminati live stream. If you're unaware of that, that's Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, John from Talking Story, and of course, Dr. Philip Chase from Philip Chase, The Best of Fantasy. We get together every quarter. One of us picks a book that's a little bit outside of our normal reading genres. This certainly is. And we talk about it. We just have a good time, 4 buddies talking about a book. I loved this book. In the title, it says 1 hit, 1 miss, 1 beast. This was the hit. This is the book of the month for me, without a doubt. Okay, I had so much fun with this story, even though it's not a real fun story, right? It's crime fiction. But I read this in 2 sittings. It's not the hugest book in the world, but it's still 430 pages. I read it in 2 sittings. I read, I want to say, about the first 100 pages in the first day. And on the second day, I had intended to read just another 100 pages. I couldn't put it down. I needed to know what happened after each chapter. And that's what you're looking for in some kind of a thriller book or a crime drama fiction book. Not slow burn, page turner, and that's what The Last Coyote is. Now, I have to shout out my friend Josh over at Red Fury Books because he has read dozens of Michael Connelly books. He may have read all the Harry Bosch books in, the Connelly catalog, and I asked him, Josh, where do I start with this? Because The Last Coyote is technically book 4 in the Harry Bosch series, but he said this is the perfect place to start. He didn't lie. He was not wrong. I loved this book. Easily the book of the month. I can't tell you too much about it because we're going to talk about it on a live stream. Also, I don't want to give away the mystery, but I will say this. Michael Connelly has a writing style that is both brief and vivid at the same time. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that you're not having to pull out the dictionary to understand some of the words that are in this book. His language is highly accessible, but he puts very common words in a manner, within the sentence that they create vivid imagery. And that you don't always find. Sometimes you have to go to an author that's got much more flowery language to get those lush, images in your brain of what's going on. Not with Michael Connelly. Brevity is his friend. It'll be your friend too. Big recommend on this. The live stream's not till December, I want to say 16th. So if you want to grab this book and participate with us, you've got ample time. Like I said, I read this in 2 sittings. Let's talk about the miss. And yeah, this was a big miss for me. This is and I hate to even do this because I've hyped this series so often on the channel. This is Andrew Rowe's Arcane Ascension. We are in book 6, and the title of the book is called A Brief History of Chronomancy. This is not really LitRPG, but it's not entirely fantasy either. It's kind of a progression-ish fantasy. It sort of melds the line between the both. And you may have heard of book 1 in this series. It was talked about many times over the year that it came out several years ago, called Sufficiently Advanced Magic. Now, I loved that book. As a matter of fact, I've listened to all of these on audio. The fantastic Nick Podell is the voice narrator on this, and he's terrific. So 5 stars for Nick Podell all day long with, this brief history of chronomancy. But books 1 through 4 for this guy worked great. They weren't formulaic, but I sort of knew what to expect, and I liked it, right? So I liked how book 1 went. Book 2 gave me more of the same, but a deeper story. Again, with book 3, deeper story, but kind of the same flow. Same with book 4. Then we hit a big roadblock at book 5, and we get into something that I call, maybe I'm the one that coined the phrase, I don't know, but I call it mana minutia, right? So the magic in this system, like in a lot of books, is called mana, however you pronounce it. And it gets so deep into the weeds of how everything works that I call it minutia, because it does not add to the story substantially unless you're looking for the hardest magic system you could possibly find. Now, the book 5, which is not what I just read, took a turn in that direction, but it sort of redeemed itself plot-wise a little bit more towards the end of the book. So what happened in book 6? What happened in this book that I was excited to read, but had some trepidation about as well, because I didn't know if we were going to return to form of books 1 through 4, or if we were going to kind of double down on what we found in book 5. And sadly, that's exactly what happened. We start off this book, I want to say the first several hours of the audiobook, maybe even the first 30 to 50% of it, was just sitting in mana minutia. And if you're somebody that loves hard magic systems, this might be a series that is swerving in your direction. Our main character, Corin Cadence, is an enchanter, is really what his magic, ability is in this series. And he does so with these images called glyphs and attunements, which are put on a body, almost like a tattoo. But the way they get there is a little bit kind of behind the scenes. I don't want to wreck the book for you, but suffice it to say, they're on the body. And Corin has the ability to see inside these glyphs and make little changes here and there to affect the functionality of the magic within these glyphs. Now, he can do it on a person, he can do it on a magical item. There's some real cool artificer stuff if that's your jam. That's in there for you. But for me, he could have covered that in a couple of chapters, not a third to half of the book. I was just like getting annoyed / angry while listening to it, going, when is this actually going to start? Story-wise, who cares about all this mana minutia? Well, then we get into the story, and this is where I got real frustrated, is because when you look at the title, A Brief History of Chronomancy, we're already told going in, chronomancy, I mean, you guys are fantasy readers or sci-fi readers, you can figure out he's talking about time magic. Now, it takes an author of the highest magnitude, in my opinion, to write a time-related magic story. So not so much time travel, but anything that involves speeding up time, slowing down time, going back in time, I guess, going forward in time, which is time travel. But when we hear about time travel, we're usually thinking about moving a main character back in time or forward in time, not the manipulation of time. That's what happens in this book. And I believe, at least in my experience, that you need an author with a very clear vision of where they are going with the story if you're going to use time magic, because it can, and in this particular case, does become a confusing mess. I did not like this book. I don't know what to do with this series, because books 1 through 4 I loved. Books 5, I was like, well, maybe it's just a road bump along the way. Book 6 was worse. It was a gigantic pothole in the road. I'm from Minnesota. We could talk about potholes, right? Yeah. Anyway, will I read book 7? I don't know. Probably. But I will say this. If I pick up book 7, whenever it does release, if it starts off with the Mana Minutia again, I'm done. I'm out. I'll take my bow out of the Arcane Ascension series and call it a day. I've got friends that love this book, that loved book 5, that their experience with it was a million miles away different than mine, but I can only tell you what I thought. So that was The Miss. Let's talk about the Beast. One hit, one miss, one beast. Here's the Beast of the Month. This is Janny Wirtz's The Wars of Light and Shadow, book 6. This is called Peril's Gate, and it is a beast. Make no mistake about it. I think this is the biggest book of the first 6 for sure, by a long shot. And this book, so you're at, if you watch the channel much, you know I love The Wars of Light and Shadow. You know I love challenging reads. So where does this fall into the series for me? Because the prior entry, Grand Conspiracy, was a gigantic hit for me. I loved Grand Conspiracy. It became, at the time, my favorite book in the Wars of Light and Shadow so far. What about Peril's Gate? Well, I'll tell you this about Peril's Gate. I'm going to set it down because the thing is heavy. Let's talk about Peril's Gate for a second. You're not going to get into any spoilers because it's a book 6 in a series. So Janny Wirtz in Peril's Gate puts our main character, Erathon, through the ringer of such psychological and emotional trauma and trials. And when you read the book, particularly the second half of the book, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But you're going to go through the ringer with our guy, Erathon. Now, if you are kind of in a normal mood, that's great, no problem. It adds to the story. It really kind of sets up what I think is the second half of the Wars of Light and Shadow. But we needed to get to, as Janny sent me so kindly in a DM, we needed to get to the tipping point. And that's what happens here. We get to the tipping point, but it's a struggle to get to the tipping point, psychologically speaking. Now, I just came off of reading Toll the Hounds, which is what I've considered to be about a 400,000 word treatise on grief, because Stephen Erickson wrote it right after the death of his father. And there's a lot of grief in there. And yeah, my friends who are, big Malazan fans tell me, well, it's also a story about love. And sure, it is, but I've had a lot of personal grief in my life this year that Toll the Hounds really compounded, unfortunately. Getting into Peril's Gate, not as grief heavy, but in many ways an opening of our main character's eyes to the realities of everything that's around him, and being absolutely struck to his core about some of his actions or inactions and how they've impacted the world around him. And it's a heavy read. Janny Wirtz does not read extremely quickly. She does it by design. She wants you to focus. She uses some of that prose that I mentioned that the Connolly, book does not. She wants you to take your time. And as my friend John at Talking Stories says, she wants you to chew your food with this. And you don't really have a choice, because if you try to speed run that book, you're gonna miss so many details that it's not even worth picking the series up to begin with. If you're gonna read The Wars of Light and Shadow, you need to prepare to be focused, not just because that they're, challenging books in terms of topic, but in terms of actually reading it and comprehending each and every sentence. Nothing is, omitted, and nothing is in there without intent. So if you just kind of skim through something, there's a real chance you could miss something gigantic, and many, many chapters or even books down the road, you may not know a detail because you glossed over it, and that detail may inform a character's choice throughout the rest of the series. So what's my, verdict on Peril's Gate? I liked the book. I understand what Janny Wirtz is doing with our main character here. It is, I want to say, book 3 in the subset within the Wars of Light and Shadow called Alliance of Light. I get it. I liked it. I did not like it as much as Grand Conspiracy. I think if you've read the series, you'll probably understand why. Just more positive things happen, at least in my opinion, in Grand Conspiracy than in Peril's Gate. I think the name Peril's Gate probably should have been an indicator to me about just sort of the sensibility of the book itself going into it. Needless to say, I love this series. It's still a good book for me. I just didn't love it as much as I loved Grand Conspiracy. No problem. Next up will be Trader's Knot, and that's going to happen, I think, in February for me, and we'll tell you why here in a second. Okay, so that's the hit, that's the miss, that's the beast. If you want to help the channel, if you like these kinds of recaps, if you feel like my personality is somebody that you might kind of jive with, don't be afraid to hit the like button. It really does help our channel grow considerably. And if you want to, to hang out a little bit more often, click that subscribe button. Give me a couple of videos to watch, right? If you like it, terrific. If you don't, you can always unsub. And of course, share the video with all your good friends and people that you know that like books. And I also want to say a special shout out to all the patrons of this channel. Yes, we do have a Patreon. It's less than $2 a month, and it is listed in the description if you want to check it out. I should also give a very, very special shout out to our Velvet Lounge members of our Patreon. Some of you guys I owe phone calls to, right? Tim, right? Zach, right? Slay, right? Darko. I owe all you guys phone calls, and we're going to take care of that in the next week or two before the holiday season really gets kicked into high gear. All right, I have to thank a couple of people for sending me some books, and then we're going to talk about the plans for December. First up, Daniel Meyer sent me his book, Credible Threats. I don't know what it's about, and to be honest with you, I don't have my glasses here, and even if I did, I don't know if I would read it because I think I want to read this blind, having no idea what it's about. This will be in the description along with the other two books that I'm going to share with you, so if you want to check it out on either Goodreads or on Amazon, you can do so. Thank you, Daniel, for sending me your book. Next up, J.G. McKenney sent me The Blademaster's Call. Again, I don't know what it's about, but it is a really cool cover of somebody with a pretty cool sword attacking a very large spider. All right, it says it's called The Chronicle of Jack Green, Book 1. Again, it'll be in the description. Thank you so much, JG, for sending me that. And now our guy Jal, and however you pronounce your name, I'm sorry, sent me Thraxis Books 3 and 4. This came out, I want to say, in the 90s by Martin Scott. They also sent me books 1 and 2 last month, but followed up to try to move this up my TBR. I don't know when that's going to happen, but we'll see. Maybe in 2026. All right, let's get into some December plans. And the big one, the biggest one of all that I've started already. I read the prologue and I kind of had to take a step back and say, oh God, here we go again. Yeah, we're talking about book 9 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. This is Dust of Dreams. You guys, I am not looking forward to this. If I'm being honest, which I always am with y'all, this one I'm not looking forward to because it seems like a lot of work. I got through that prologue with the intention of reading it, the prologue, and I'll do chapter 1. Now, unfortunately, I'm having to read this on my Kindle because I'm waiting on the broken binding. If you look behind me, you'll see the first 3 books in Malazan already back there. The second 3 books of Malazan have been shipped and they're going to arrive here any day. But Dust of Dreams probably won't, hit my house, right? I don't think they've even produced it yet. So I had a choice. I do this on ebook on the Kindle, or I get the mass market paperback, which the font is like minuscule, and no thank you. So I'm reading this thing on Kindle, and I get through the prologue, which is absolutely the most confusing prologue of the first 9 Malazan books that I've read. And then I look at chapter 1, and I look at my Kindle, and it says 1 hour and 5 minutes remaining in the chapter. I didn't have the headspace for it. I'm going to get back into that tonight, I believe. I'm a little concerned. So many people have told me Dust of Dreams is their least favorite book in the first main 10 books of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And it is not a small book. It's just under 400,000 words. So I'm doing this a little bit with some trepidation, But also understand that I've rearranged my reading schedule just slightly, because if you've been following the channel, I've been reading one Malazan book a month, and every other month I'm reading Malazan book, and then the opposite month I'm reading Janny Wurtz's The Wars of Light and Shadow. Now, that's obviously a crazy thing to do, reading these two giant series concurrently, but nobody ever said I was sane in the first place. But for books 9 and books 10, The Crippled God, I'm going to read them back to back, which is a lot of reading, but from what I gather in sort of the author's note in Dust of Dreams is that they were really intended to be one big, huge book in the first place, and to not expect book 9 to kind of wrap itself up in a bow and be tidy at the end, because it's really the first half of what, you know, turns out to be The Crippled God at the end. So, excuse me, no editing today, right? Let's get some water. This is compelling television, isn't it? All right, so Dust of Dreams, that's going to be the first up. I am allotting myself like 3.5 weeks to read Dust of Dreams. If I get it done sooner, terrific. Right now on audiobook, I am listening to, we are in LitRPG, I am listening to The Primal Hunter 5 by Zogarth, and this is narrated, I want to say, by Travis Baldry. It's so good. You all Primal Hunter fans, and I know that we don't always get a lot of crossover here on BookTube between fantasy, science fiction, and LitRPG. BellTube is really one of the few channels that talks about all of them. So for you LitRPG fans out there that have been pushing me to get into the Primal Hunter for the last couple of years, I have to say thank you. I'm enjoying this series tremendously. I've already started it on audio, and I'm loving it so much. So The Primal Hunter is going to be basically the other book that I'm reading in December, because Dust of Dreams is going to take forever. Now, I was also informed that one of my favorite LitRPG series has an audiobook coming out the second week of December, and that's Eric Ueglen's In the Good Guys series. And I said in a prior video, whenever a Good Guys audiobook drops, I have to drop whatever I'm listening to and move over to that, because it's read by the one and only, the fantastic Neil Helligers, who is a top 5 voice actor for me in audio narration. And he sent me an email saying, hey, Brian, I don't want to, mess up your, December TBR too much, but I'm probably going to mess up your TBR because that book is dropping the second week of December. So I'm going to be into the Good Guys for that. I don't even know what number we're on, 15, 16, 17. I have no clue. But if you like LitRPG and you want to know more about the Good Guys series, just message me in the comments and I will answer you there. It's a huge favorite of mine. Those are the 3 books that I've got lined up for December. So essentially 2 LitRPG and 1 gigantic fantasy book. Let's talk about some things coming up in December on BellTube itself. And this starts with a big one. On December 9th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific. Yeah, I can do some basic math. And we are talking about doing a live stream to celebrate the release of this little book right here. Now, if you've watched the channel, I know you know what this is. And if you're new here and this is just kind of your first go around with me, welcome. I'm Brian. This is BellTube. Probably should have said that at the very beginning. This is J.A.J. Minton. This is John. This is Amy. This is Jacob. Minton's Strange Eons. Book 1, Discovery. This is far and away the most genre-blending book I've read in the last probably year and a half-ish or so, combining urban fantasy with cosmic horror, with science fiction, with just everything. And if you can think of the genre in the SFF world, it's somewhere in here. We're going to do a live stream here on BellTube Tuesday, December 9th, celebrating the release of their audiobook, which is done by Podium Entertainment. They're sponsoring the stream. And not only am I going to be talking with the authors, we have 5 of the 7 voice actors that participated in the narration of this book also going to be joining us on the live stream. So if you've read this book and you want to get all kind of the backstage info, right, on what went into making the audiobook, join us for that live stream. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a three-ring circus because John himself is a circus, right? You put me and John on camera at the same time, you're going to get a circus. Now you start adding in 5 voice actors plus Amy and Jacob, and we're thinking I'm going to run this show. Yeah, you know me, I'll find a way to do it. But that's happening on December 9th. Over on Library Unbounded, that's my friend Sylvia's channel, on December 13th, we will be talking about the aforementioned book 5 in the Wars of Light and Shadow. That is Grand Conspiracy. We have a huge group read along, and we're a little bit behind, and that's kind of my fault because they asked me to sort out the schedule, and Sylvia's in Bulgaria, and John's in North Carolina, and I'm here in Minnesota, and there's a lot of other Abel Montero's in Italy. It's a lot of coordination, but that's going to happen on December 13th if you're a fan of the Wars of Light and Shadow, or if you're somebody that's been reading along with us, that's the day you want to tune in. I will put up a card as we get a little bit closer, maybe next week's video, so you can get the time sorted out, but I want to think it's 2 p.m. Eastern on that Saturday. Let's talk about December 16th. That's going to be a Tuesday night. I think we're going to do this at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. This is the gathering. This is the quarterly gathering of the Quilluminati. Like I said, the aforementioned Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, John from Talking Story, and Dr. Philip Chase from Philip Chase's The Best of Fantasy. We're all going to be converging right here, or convening, I should say, right here on BellTube, December 16th. We're going to talk about The Last Coyote, and we're going to reveal what the next book is going to be, and John is actually picking the next book. So if you want to find out what that is, stay tuned for that. And you've got time to read The Last Coyote. Like I said, I did it in 2 sittings, and you'll be good to go. As far as the rest of the December goes on BellTube, you're going to get all kind of the year-end type of content that I love making so much. You're going to get my top 10 most disappointing books of the year. I know that's always a favorite because I hold no punches. You're going to get my top 10 books of the year, which again, I know is a big favorite because I can get so excited and passionate about books that I love. I want to push it through the camera and get it into your mind because they're books that I love and recommend, and I love sharing those with you guys. We're going to talk about some surprises. We're going to probably do the top 10 surprises of the year. Things that I had, sort of middling expectations of that either, met my expectations or just fell hugely flat. We'll see how that goes. There's all the good year-end stuff. All right, let's do it one for the road, and I'll let you out of here today. Did you make any 2025 New Year's resolutions? I want to ask that. So 11 months ago, on January 1st, lots of us make New Year's resolutions. And I cautioned everybody a year ago this week saying, I'd be kind of careful about making New Year's resolutions because if you don't do them by, like, say, the middle of January, chances are you're never going to do them. So here's my ask for you today. Did you make a New Year's resolution last January? Did you do it? If so, terrific. All right, video's over. Great. If you did not, think about maybe why you didn't, okay? It doesn't matter. There's all kinds of legitimate reasons, but that's not very important. What is important is, as I'm filming this today, it's December 4th. This is going to come out on December 5th, right? So you've got 3 weeks to take one single action towards whatever it was that you had given yourself for a New Year's resolution back in January. If it's going to the gym, if you can go to the gym one time in the next 3 months, let's call it you hit it. You did a good job. If you decided you're going to eat healthier, can you make one super healthy meal between now and the end of the year? We're going to call it a win. If you decided that you were going to read a particular book in 2025 and you never even started it, can you read the first page? If you can read the first page, we're going to call that a win. What we want to try to do here, and where I'm getting at with this, is can we feel at least some small sense of accomplishment for whatever we put ourselves, through the ringer about thinking about a New Year's resolution last year? Can we give ourselves the grace to say, all right, I may not have done the entire thing, but I got one book read, or I got one page read of a hard book, or I got to that gym one time. Whatever it is, it doesn't even matter. Just so long as you felt like you took one moment of your life between now and the end of the year and went back to your thought and said, okay, I'm going to intentionally do something so I can start 2026 with a little bit more of momentum than a full stop and having to restart. That's my challenge for you today. I want to know in the comments, what did you read in the month of November? Did anything stand out? Did you have a hit? Did you have a miss? Did you read any beasts? What you looking forward to in December? I've got some big book. I've got that Dust of Dreams is a little daunting. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to in December. Everybody, leave a comment. This has been a fun time, and I think I did it in one take, so kick butt. All right, everybody, stay positive. And of course, here's your fortune.